And as we said last year and say over and over again, the Palestinian resistance, the Palestinian struggle, the Palestinian will to live, the identity, always finds the most incredible ways to articulate itself. Tonight, it is my honor to introduce for you yet another beautiful voice of the resistance, the Muslim Palestinian poet, teacher, and student, and organizer, born in Brooklyn, New York City, and I can't read her, but it's great to be here with the real heart. Please give it up to our very own Tahani Salah.
I've been questioned so many times in my life, they start to question me. So I start to question myself. This is one question you asked me, and I felt as if I had to answer. You asked me, what do you stand for? So this is my answer. I stand for the stolen voices of children, for one little boy named Hassan that sits on a boulder that once held the center of his home no longer, with no mother to hold him and no father to scold him. As people walk by and watch their deep eyes rise dark and empty, they say they were one of our children. Bear witness to the destruction. We have all seen the faces of war turned and said, I feel sorry for them. But that doesn't erase the faces. Bear witness to our children, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Society places bars across the necks of our innocence when our children are still fighting the mental fight of suicide every night as they lay their heads to bed and ask God, why? Why us? Is this the distance between heaven and hell, and every day is purgatory? When we still have children sitting in Flatbush, Brooklyn, going buck fashion just to get their faces on a wall in remembrance. When we still have children sitting here in middle America poverty, starving. So how could we ask for help? America, we took 20 steps back instead of taking one step forward. Society, feeding our children became a democracy act. So I tell you to unmask these philosophies. We are more than bloody footsteps under their new adventures. Remember that we know our names and we know the importance that we burn like the stars in the sky. We are willing to fight, love, and share. We are more than this. So speak for the unspoken and live for the lives that have been ripped from us. Thank you. Sometimes a question that comes to me a lot is that they ask me, why do I write about the topic of Palestine? And it's more than just where I'm from. It's more than just our blood. It's more than just a topic in the news. A lot of the time, they tend to ask questions of, well, what do you think about suicide bombing? How can you condone these actions? And this night today is more than that. As said before, this is a remembrance and this is an understanding and a thank you to the people who've made those strides to make these beautiful things happen and taking care and surviving. So that, and just in that, I thank you. And this poem is dedicated to the children, the voices that are being snuffed out, that are being blocked and pulled from us, that we'll never hear. She will start the day with the sun illuminating on the backs of her buildings slowly crumbling, with the thread stitched into her thighs, preventing her from walking on her own 2 feet. You may call her a democracy in training. Others may call her an apartheid, and I would call her genocide. She is Palestine. She is where I call home. With her children watching, did you not know? Did you not think that they would want to tattoo the tears of mothers across the backs of their neck to keep their heads from falling in disappointment? Stare their brother's enemy in the eye the way the mothers taught them to. Never forget the feeling of living where our lives living in division. Hold your heart to the sky and listen, for we are leaves lined with lineage, lingering love laying lifeless. We are more than this. Learning this language of patience. We are not angry nor revengeful. We are waiting. We are waiting for the tears of God to hit our pupils, for we are his pupil. We are ready with the name of God stitched into the palms of our fists, with the burned bodies of babies in the backs of our throats as we chant. In these streets, in the name of our people, we will stand. With God under our tongues, we will stand. We will never forget. Did you not think that we wouldn't carry pride on our chests and hold our people on our backs? We will carry old souls under our arms like newspapers. So promise us tombstones with La ilaha illallah on them, and we'll be there. Promise me a forever and tomorrow, because this is not another war poem. This is the inside of my heart, the childhood of Palestine. There is no visa, no demolished home that could ever keep me from her. So I searched my heart inside out for that lost freedom bird, and she's left me a message. Find me in the shadows of tomorrow, where the sun shines best and the children will smile even if you never promise them tomorrow. For this anthem of sunsets and thunderquakes and the heartbeat of a people, for the sun is rising for those mothers whose sons will never rise. We will stand, chant, scream, and shout, for our hearts are beating way faster than any drum they could beat on our tombstones. So let them know that we are here and the world is ready to welcome us home. Thank you.
Every time that I've complained about being tired, whether it's from work or organizing, I'm reminded by my mother, who sits here, that the Honorable MP George Galloway, who is, albeit more youthful than I am, a bit farther along in age than I am, and she reminds me that this man who has traveled the world in the last 6, 7, 8 months, who slept on floors, who goes without regular meals, who's left his family behind to be with us here today, apparently somehow doesn't get tired, but of course he does, but he fights through it. He sacrificed more than the majority of the Arabs and Palestinians I know combined, shamefully. And not just for the past few months, but for 35 years, he's been organizing for the Arab people across the world, lifting the voices of the oppressed. In Palestine, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in the refugee camps, where he just delivered the balance of the supplies that the Egyptian government refused to allow into Palestine. Our only regret in knowing and hosting the Honorable MP is that we wish that we had a Palestinian leader to whom you would flock in so many numbers on such short notice. Because the Honorable MP, and we wish we had the same, has proven time and again, and like I said, for 35 years, that his goals are righteous, his work is clean and principled, and he has never undermined or sought to dictate to the masses in the Arab world, to the Palestinian people, what their political goals and aspirations are. Instead, he has simply lifted the obstacles to those aspirations. And so, without any further ado, please welcome the Honourable Member of Parliament, George Galloway.
Jamal Deek, leader of Awda, New York. Mr. President, Wael, Father Makhlouf, dear rabbis from the Torah Carta, brothers and sisters, comrades and friends, Assalamu alaikum. I would like to begin by congratulating Egypt on winning the African Nations Cup of Heroes for their historic victory. And I know that the great people of Egypt will be celebrating throughout the land and throughout the world this evening. And I would like them to know that I am with them in this moment of triumph for Egypt. I think it's very important that I begin by saying that notwithstanding some of the things that have been seen and some of the things that I shall say, that we love the Arab people of Egypt from the bottom of our hearts. Egypt, the land of Al-Azhar. Egypt, the land of Jamal Abdel Nasser. Egypt, the liberators of the Suez Canal. Egypt, which has given so many martyrs in the wars for Palestine We can never hate you and we will never hurt you. Our quarrel is with the tin pot tyranny, the dictator, Hosni Mubarak, and those who serve him. Father Makhlouf, in a way, asked earlier a question which is regularly asked of me. Why you, Scottish, Irish, from thousands of miles away from the Arab lands, why have you spent 35 years, I know I'm older than I look, 35 years fighting for these Arab causes, the principal of which is Palestine? I always answer this way. Che Guevara was not Cuban, but he fought for the liberation of Cuba. Guevara was not African, but he fought alongside the greatest of all African leaders, Patrice Lumumba, for the freedom of the Congo. And he was not Bolivian, but he gave his life's blood in the mountains of Bolivia so they could be free from dictatorship, which blessedly they now are. And I march behind the banner of Guevara. I believe in what he said, that the man who is not capable of trembling with indignation at any injustice on anyone, anywhere, he is not a real man. That is my mentality, and that is why I am here. I'm very happy indeed to be back with my friends in Brooklyn, New York. And just as I didn't come here to raise a single word against the people of Egypt, let me say that I come here as the great-grandson of the only woman in the whole of the 19th century who emigrated from New York City to Scotland. She got on the wrong boat. I have not come here to raise a single word against the people of the United States either. I frequently read, and I read again in advance of this short 3-day visit to the United States, that somehow I've come here to harm the United States, that somehow we who raise funds for the humanitarian relief of a people under siege are giving succor, comfort, maybe even material aid to terrorism. We raise funds and we fight and organize to relieve the victims of terrorism, the victims of a terrorism more terrible than any individual act of terrorism, heinous though they may be. A terrorism which has persisted for more than 60 years. Last week, I spoke in Lyon, in France, near the border with Switzerland, at a huge gathering for Palestine, bringing Jews and Christians and Muslims and non-believers together to break the siege on Gaza. Over a crackly telephone line, in a darkened room, a disembodied voice from one of the leaders of the resistance in besieged Gaza was explaining to the people the daily depredations of life under siege. I thought to myself, those of a certain age may identify with this, that it could have been a Second World War time broadcast from occupied France, and the voice could have been one of the heroes of the French resistance. And yes, the next day, that hero's voice might have been stilled in the brutality of Nazi occupation of Lyon, where resistance was more developed and more brave than anywhere else in France. And the resistance fighter may have fallen, but at least the world would have known that he was the resistance, and the people who killed him were the terrorist criminals occupying his land. And that's the unkindest cut of all. David is a Shakespearean. The unkindest cut of all is that in Palestine, the victims of terrorism are called the terrorists, and the terrorists are called the victims of terrorism. And that's the injustice against which we must stand. So I say to the FBI man in the room, would the FBI man in the room like to identify himself? We're not here to raise money for guns. We're not involved in terrorist funding. We're fighting for the victims of the aeroplanes and the helicopters and the tanks and the warships and the heavy weaponry, which is paid for by the United States of American government. It's the American government that's involved in funding the terrorism of the Israeli state, not us who's involved in funding terrorism against it. We don't fight the people of the United States or even the government of the United States. We're fighting the policy of the United States. And this is a free country, a democratic country, and we have every right to fight against a policy which we disagree with. And we oppose that policy not just because it harms the people of Palestine in the ways in which that wonderful film you've just seen made clear. We fight against that policy because it harms the interests of the people of the United States of America themselves. Billions and billions of dollars, unlimited weaponry is given to this little settler state called Israel, making hundreds of millions of people around the world hate the United States of America, some of them ready to harm American interests. We say to President Obama, change this policy in the interests of your own people, as well as in the interests of the people who are victims of that policy more directly. Now, the last time I was here, and some of you chided me afterwards for doing so, I spoke strongly of my sense of hope at the election of President Obama. I believed in the one conversation I had with him long before he was president. I believed that he understood more than any American president the realities of what they call the Israel-Palestine conflict. I knew that he had sat at the feet of the late and great Professor Edward Said, Raja Khalidi and others. I knew that he knew and that he didn't have the alibi that the last guy did of being an imbecile. I knew that Professor Obama had the intellect to understand that this policy of the United States of unlimited financial and military and political support for this little settler state was the principal cause of hatred, division, instability, and violence throughout the world. And I still believe that he knows that. The problem is that his words spoken in Cairo, the capital of the Arab world, the heart of the Arab world, which gave so much hope to 300 million Arabs from the Atlantic to the Gulf, which gave so much hope to those with an interest in resolving with justice this conflict. Those words have not been matched by deeds. There was no change, not even change you can't believe in. There was no change at all in the attitude, in practice of the government of the United States. And I say with all respect to President Obama that the course on which he has embarked can only lead to disaster for the world and for his own presidency. Because if he continues the Bush policy in Palestine and elsewhere, he'll go down to the same ignominious defeat that the Bush gang went down to at his hands in November of 2008. I urge him to change course in the interests of everyone who had invested so much hope in the change that he had promised. A measure of the total contempt for which the settler state of Israel holds even the United States of America, which pays all of its bills, was brazenly displayed just a few days ago when at the very minute that Senator George Mitchell's aeroplane took to the skies, Benjamin Netanyahu was planting trees on the illegally occupied West Bank of Palestine, West Bank of the Jordan, and declaring that Israel will never leave this land which they stole in 1967 and have held in absolute defiance of every United Nations Security Council resolution ever since. He declared that those settlements which President Obama had declared in Cairo were intolerable and unacceptable, would continue to be built and would continue forever. So the question for President Obama is this: are you going to tolerate what you said was intolerable? Are you going to accept what you said was unacceptable? And if you do, the world will continue to be destabilized, and a great swamp of hatred and bitterness will deepen and grow, and that's not in the interests of anyone, least of all the United States of America. Now there's another uncomfortable truth that we have to face, and it wasn't spoken in that video for reasons I understand. And it wasn't spoken by any of these speakers who addressed you this evening. And it's this: that the siege on the people of Gaza imposed, I remind you, because it's vital to continue to remember this, for no other reason than that the people of Palestine, in a free, transparent, and democratic election, praised by the world, voted for a party which Britain and America and Israel don't like. That's the reason the siege was imposed. It was imposed the day after that election result, when it became clear that the people who had won the election were not prepared to implement the policy of the people they had defeated in that election. I want to make this clear, not for the FBI. I want to make it clear because it's the honest truth. I have never been a supporter of Hamas. I was with Arafat from my age of 21 years old, and was with him at his bedside in the Percy Military Hospital in Paris when he passed away. I have never accepted that anyone is entitled to choose the Palestinian leadership except the Palestinian people themselves. I didn't accept the right of others to deselect Arafat, and I don't accept the right of others to de-elect Hamas either. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The siege on Gaza is not just an Israeli siege. It's not just an Israeli and American siege. It's not just an Israeli and American and European siege. It's an Arab siege as well. That's the truth. You saw all those people on that video locked out of the gates of Gaza. Why? Why are the gates from one Arab country to another Arab country locked at all? Indeed, why are there gates at all? That's the question we have to ask. You saw His Excellency, the former governor of North Sinai, say with a straight face on the video that the convoy is allowed to enter Gaza for a full, he emphasized, a full 24 hours. Why 24 hours? Why should one Arab country tell hundreds of people who came all the way from America to give medicine to another Arab people under siege? Why should they be allowed just a full 24 hours and not as long as they would like to stay in that Arab country? And here I want to address the Israeli embassy propaganda, including from the embassy here, or the consulate here in New York City. They said that we received the treatment we did just a few weeks ago because we came the wrong way, because we didn't follow their orders as to how we should enter. Why then did they treat the American convoy in July in an almost identical way? Why then did they treat the first convoy from Britain, which arrived in March, almost exactly the same way? Why have they treated every convoy, whoever organized it, whichever port they entered through, in almost exactly the same way? And why did they club to the ground and pull by the hair and punch and arrest the hundreds of foreigners on the Gaza Freedom March who had the temerity to arrive in Cairo on the anniversary of the 22-day war on Gaza to offer their solidarity? Why were they beating foreigners in the middle of Cairo, in the middle of the day, in the middle of the tourist season on live TV? This regime of Hosni Mubarak, as well as being wicked, are about as stupid a regime as it's possible to imagine anywhere in the world. They managed. And I begged them not to do so. I begged them, live on television. 3 times I begged them to emphasize the point. Don't turn the 27th of December, which should be an anniversary in which all eyes and all fingers are pointing at the terrorist state of Israel, don't turn that anniversary into an attack, a criticism of yourselves. But they were too stupid to see it, and they did it. And so it happened that the entire media in the Arab world was asking on the 27th of December, not why Israel attacked Gaza, but why Egypt was stopping those coming to the aid of the Palestinian people from all over the world. Now, I won't dwell on what happened, but you saw it, I think, for yourselves. 520 people from 17 different countries, driving more than 200 vehicles, ambulances, trucks, vehicles of all kinds, carrying generators and children's toys and baby milk and medicine and medical equipment desperately needed by the people inside. They'd come from 17 countries, from as far away as Australia and Malaysia, from all over Europe, from the United States of America, and most importantly of all, hundreds of them had come from the new Turkey, led by Prime Minister Erdogan, of whom we are so proud. Wallahi, how I wish that Egypt had a leader like Erdogan. How things would be different. Actually, I wish that Britain had a leader like Erdogan. I wish we all had a leader like Erdogan. How different the world would be. The Turkish humanitarian organization, IHH, operating in 100 countries worldwide, founded by Erdogan and by the Turkish president, Mr. Gül. They moved mountains, and without them, I don't believe that our convoy would have made it into Gaza at all. We entered for 48 hours this time. We were given the full 48 hours. But 55 of our convoy members entered Gaza still bleeding from the assaults that they had suffered from the security forces of the tyrant Mubarak. Their white bandages staining red as they entered the Gaza Strip. But as I told them would happen, the people of Gaza were kissing their bandages, kissing the blood on their heads, because it had been shed in order to reach Palestine. Some of them were receiving marriage proposals as a result of their broken bones and the blood on their heads. One of them still there. I don't know if he's yet married, but you can see him on YouTube, half Scottish, half Libyan, addressing the security forces of Mubarak in impeccable classical Arabic, asking them to imagine that it was their daughter, their mother, who was behind those gates, desperately in need of the medicine that he had brought, how they would feel. He told them, "We have no issue with you. We have no quarrel with you. All that we ask is that you allow us to pass to the prisoners inside Gaza, in this great concentration camp which has been referred to this evening." But I'll tell you this, Gaza is the only prison in the world where people from all over the world are fighting to get in rather than fighting to get out. And the reason for that has already been alluded to. We, with our convoys, are often thanked by the people in Gaza. But the proper answer is that it is we who should be thanking you for the example of resistance which you have displayed to the whole world. Lamis, earlier in her introductory remarks, made a point which is often missed. We all started out in this cause, myself 35 years ago, to try to help liberate Palestine from the river to the sea. We have not yet achieved it, but Gaza is the only part of Palestine which is free and liberated and dignified and Arab, and that's why we love it so much. Now, you know what happened to me at the end of that 48 hours. I received word from inside the Egyptian state that I was to be arrested on my re-entry into Egypt from Gaza. I knew that if I was arrested in front of 520 of my comrades, there would be a repetition of the horrific events in Al-Arish, in which so many of our people were wounded and some arrested. So, together with my comrade Ron Mackay, who's now coordinating the work of Viva Palestina here in the United States, I decided to leave at the dead of night in advance of the others. And sure enough, as soon as we crossed onto Egyptian territory, we were forcibly, physically, violently, imagine how many times I crossed the Israeli lines into Palestine and Israel never laid a finger on me. I was violently, physically forced into a van, unmarked, by Egyptian security forces and driven, surrounded by Mubarak, security forces of the Egyptian regime, with a car in front full of them, a car behind full of them, and a car driving alongside us full of them, and 4 of them in the vehicle with us. None of them saying they could speak English, none of them telling us where we were going. For all we knew, we might have been going to prison or worse. They drove us to Cairo airport. When we got out of the vehicle, we tried to hail a taxi to take us back to the Gaza border. They forced us into the airport. They followed us around the airport, even to the toilet, standing next to us at the urinal in the toilet. When Ron took the picture of one of them, there was almost a shooting incident in front of all the tourists in Cairo airport. They told me that I was to be deported, although incompetent as they are, they failed to stamp my passport. And as I got onto the steps of the airplane, one of the officials of the Mubarak regime stepped forward. Speaking English, he said that I was declared persona non grata and was no longer welcome in Egypt and would not be welcome again in Egypt. Now, classical scholars amongst you will know that persona non grata is Latin for a person without status. I've got news for you, President Mubarak. From where I'm standing, I have rather more status in the Arab Republic of Egypt than you do, or those who serve you. And I will one day be back in Egypt when your dictatorship falls and the Egyptians are on the streets in their millions. I'll be there in the streets of Cairo, God willing. And I assure you, who will have the status then, I can assure you, will not be you or the torturers in your employ. Much more seriously, the regime then announced that there would be no more land convoys permitted across Egyptian soil into Gaza. And they added, whomsoever leads them. Let me tell you why they added that last phrase. Because the next land convoy was going to be led by Comandante Hugo Chavez of Viva Palestina, Venezuela. And you can imagine President Mubarak doesn't want to see Hugo Chavez in Egypt. The people of Egypt might rise up and make Chavez the president of the Arab Republic of Egypt. With Erdogan as his prime minister, that would be quite a team. That would change everything. So there are no more land convoys. What are our options? Well, let me tell you the one non-option. We will never leave the people of Gaza to face this suffering alone. We will never allow them to face this suffering alone. And so there's only one way. The sea is open for those who have the courage to take to it. And I assure them, we do and we will. We will. My comrade Kevin, whom you saw in the video, the former coordinator of Viva Palestina USA, the organizer of the American convoy, indeed the organizer of all three of the convoys, is today in Istanbul, negotiating with the Turkish brothers there, brothers and sisters, I may say, for one of the great things about the Turkish movement is how important and prominent the women of that organization are. He's negotiating in Istanbul this day for a Viva Palestina 4, which will leave the Turkish port of Messine with ships from many nations, from South Africa, from Malaysia, from Venezuela, and I hope from the United States of America. And we'll be sailing into the harbor of Gaza over the next few months. And I hope that you will be there with us. Here's how it will work. We will charter Turkish ships. We will sail with the blessing of the government of Turkey. We will sail under Turkish flags from wherever we came. We will sail through the international waters, a huge flotilla of ships filled with aid, including building materials, which Egypt has never allowed ever to cross through the Rafah gate, so that all those people whose houses were destroyed are still living in tents in the rubble of their destroyed houses. Our ships will be filled with cement and hammers and nails and building materials and glass to repair the 40,000 broken windows in Gaza. And if I may quote Bob Dylan here in New York City, when our ship comes in, all of Gaza will be lined along the shore. It will be a day like no other day that has ever dawned in the Gaza Strip. And I hope that you'll be a part of it. Of course, Israel may try to stop it. But if we have enough ships, with enough publicity, with enough VIPs on board, if we have enough ships that we can't all be turned back, that we can't all be rammed, that we can't all be jailed like Cynthia in Ashkelon, then we'll get there, God willing. We'll arrive in Gaza, God willing. And if they keep us at sea, we'll remain at sea. That'll be a good movie. That'll be a good story around the world. People from all the countries of the earth trying to bring aid to a people under siege, being blockaded by Israeli naval vessels supplied free of charge by the taxpayers of the United States of America. So we're going by sea to Gaza. If you own a ship, volunteer. If you've got sea legs, come forward. Bill has never been to sea, but he did work in the docks, and that's good enough. I met 2 lifeguards outside. That's good enough. If you can't be with us for whatever reason, then you have to support us financially. You have to give to Awda, New York, who will fundraise between now and the convoy to make sure that New York City is represented on that convoy. You have to raise the money to charter the ships. You have to raise the money to fill the ships. And here's a new angle. We're not just going to take things into Gaza. We're going to take produce and artifacts and sand and pebbles from the beach of Gaza, sand from the refugee camps of Gaza. We're going to fill our ships with things from Gaza, and we're going to take them outside and offer them to the world, making a sea bridge between besieged Gaza and the outside world. We will never forget. We will never forget the people of Gaza, and we will never leave them standing alone. Here I address the Arabs and the Muslims in the audience with words many of you have heard from me before about the little girl in Gaza who lost her mother and her father and all 5 of her brothers, to whom I spoke in March in the rubble of her house, who asked me, where is this great Arab world that they teach us about in school? Where is this ummah that they teach us about in school? Why did they leave us alone? Why did they leave us to face all of this alone? What did we do to deserve to be left to face all of this alone? I told her then, and I want to tell her again, that the regimes may be sleeping, but the Arabs and the Muslims and the decent Christians and the decent non-believers around the world want to come to your side and are determined to do so. Go to our website, vivapalestina.org. Click on the American page. Ron will be overhauling it. We're back in business. We're alive and kicking. We're sailing to Gaza, and I hope to see you there, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum.
I see folks heading for the door, and I'm going to call you out and ask you to turn around. The honorable MP who's been on his feet not just all evening, but for the past month, the past 35 years of his life, is not walking out of this room. So I ask that everybody here give him the same respect, and please wait until this evening is finished. Asfar, Ammi Abdullah Safari, and Sheikh Farghad, سامحني Sheikh إذا إني غلطت في اسمك, to please join me and the honorable MP on stage for a few more minutes. As you heard, the money, you want to know where your money goes, email us, look us up, look at the accounting of Viva Palestina. Every red cent we receive and will receive, is sent directly to Gaza. The money you raise will be for supplies into Gaza. So, a moment as we organize up here. We have pledge cards. Would the people with the pledge cards please raise their hands?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ليس عليك هداهم ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء وما تنفقوا من خير فلأنفسكم وما تنفقون إلا ابتغاء وجه الله وما تنفقوا من خير يوفى إليكم وأنتم لا تظلمون للفقراء الذين أحصروا في سبيل الله الذين أحصروا في سبيل الله لا يستطيعون ضربا في الأرض يحسبهم الجاهل أغنياء من التعفف تعرفهم بسيماهم لا يسألون الناس إلحافا وما تنفقوا من خير فإن الله به عليم الذين ينفقون أموالهم بالليل والنهار سرا وعلانية فلهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون صدق الله العظيم.
Takbir. Takbir. Just for your knowledge, the container is about $10,000. One container is $10,000. So who will start with $10,000 right now? Who is ready to say, I have the $10,000, I'll be the first one?
We're going to interrupt for a few more minutes, and we get to hear from the honorable MP one last time for the evening.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The importance of this cannot be overestimated. We're going to have several ships from Turkey. We're going to have several ships from Malaysia. We'll have at least 2 ships, I believe, from the United Kingdom. We need to have at least 1 ship from the United States of America. The chartering of 1 ship will be $40,000. A container is $10,000. So in order to fill a ship, you're looking at the best part of $100,000 from the whole of the United States of America. Is that beyond you? You raised $66 million for Haiti on one television program. And God bless you for doing so. If you can raise $66 million for Haiti, then the whole of the United States can raise $100,000 for a ship to Gaza. Let's get a good start here and raise at least one container from New York City. Please.
We've gotten our first donation of $5,000. Is there anybody else in this room who would like to match that donation with another $5,000? If so, please raise your hand. Anybody else for $5,000? Half a container to Gaza.
The first $5,000 were from جمعية البيرة فرع نيويورك. جزاكم الله خير.
الأخوة يحيى المنتصر محمد طراد. الأخوة يعني ما أريد أقول من أبناء اليمن $5,000. تكبير تكبير تكبير. من $5,000 أخرى يا أخوة؟ هذا معانا الآن $10,000. من يرفع يده $5,000 أخرى؟ $5,000 أخرى. من؟ تكبير. الله يخلف عليك بخير. الاسم الكريم
خليل الحرباوي.
خليل الحرباوي $5,000. تكبير.
الله أكبر.
تكبير. $5,000. تكبير.
الله أكبر.
تكبير. اللهم اخلف عليهم بخير يا أرحم الراحمين. $5,000 الأخير عند من؟ $5,000 أخرى عند من؟ 5,000.
خير. تكبير. From Natori Karta, $5,000. تكبير.
I'm good.
From الأخ زياد رمضان. Joel Covell, $500. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. وائل حسان $100. جزاك الله خير.
Yeah, Jama'ah, if this was for our kids, if this food was going to feed our kids, I guarantee you we do a lot better. We need to see more donations, $150, $10, whatever it is, please.
Just for a second, with the help of the Almighty, first, we cannot thank His Excellency, Member of Parliament George Galloway, for making this initiative and bringing all these funding and the beginning of help and awareness to the world that the world has to awake from this deafening silence. I just want to say that with the help of the Almighty, we just came back also from Gaza. We somehow finagled our way in with the Gaza Freedom March. We were in Zaytun. We went to Zaytun, as you've seen on the movie here, on the video, and Zaytun was totally destroyed, and there's a family which was I think 29 members were destroyed, the Samuni family. We took pictures. I want you to know that it is now one whole year since the destruction over there, and they had members of the Samuni family taken to Brussels. We went to visit them in the hospitals, and the world is aware of what happened to them. And you should know that in Haiti, what happened now, the world is totally upset because there is not help, the help is not coming fast enough. And they're right, but how many weeks is it since the terrible, terrible earthquake? What is it, a week and a half? 3 weeks. And the world is up in arms, and they're starting to make investigations why there wasn't fast to help. It is over a year, and the world knows what happened to them because they took some of those children to Brussels. They're living in tents. The members of the Samuni family, I have pictures of it. They're living in tents. And what does a tent mean? A piece of plastic over a string. It's unheard of. There's a deafening silence because the world considers this a religious conflict, which is totally a farce. This is purely an oppression of a people illegitimate according to God, according to the Jewish Torah. We're begging the world to stand up and help these people. They don't need a tent. We have to replace that with a normal abode, with houses, with help, assistance. Here you have the man who's bringing that assistance, who's fearlessly bringing us this help. Give what you have in your pockets. Give. You must help these people because the world, unfortunately, is being duped and is silent. With God's help, we should successfully free Palestine, free Gaza.
Thank you very much.
I just asked this young man, Shismak, Muhammad Nahsan, if he had money, how much money would he give to Palestine? How much money would you give to Palestine, Muhammad?
$50,000.
Thank you, Muhammad. اعتبرهن واصلة.